We're very happy to have with us Elizabeth Rowe and Greg Anderson, a piano duo which is has a very very good reputation since a few years. Well, some critics, some media's just told about you that you were one of the most important renovators of the duet and piano, and also your eclectism is quite interesting because you alternate Dvorak and Freddie Mercury and Paul Simon and Edvard Grieg, so you're able to mix cultures and make something else with that in a classical way. So welcome at Panem and welcome in Montreal. I think you've been a couple of times in Montreal, didn't you?
Yes, thank you for having us, first of all.
We're very happy to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, we've been to Montreal before. We love it. It's certainly one of our favorite cities in all of North America and the world, actually.
Oh, thank you. Fine. Well, the program of the next step in Montreal, the next station would be in the lineage of the Mother album that's been released in 2018, if I remember.
That sounds right.
Since I don't know, you didn't record a lot, or maybe not. But the program of this Sunday at the end of April, April 21st to be more precise, at 3 p.m. This is the repertoire is kind of close to the album, but not exactly the same.
Yeah, I think there's only one overlapping piece from that album from 2018.
Yeah, but it's the same lineage, I would say.
Oh, sure, certainly. Every concert we play, we try to include a variety that reflects both the variety of our lives, but also of the world. And so we're often looking for sources of inspiration in the musical realm that runs the gamut. And this concert next Sunday certainly is no different. If anything, it's more related to the album we just recorded a couple weeks ago, which has not been released yet. But that album centers on this idea of transcendence in music and I don't know, a state of almost spiritual ecstasy, like Hallelujah. And we're playing our Hallelujah variations, which we recorded on that album, which is based on Leonard Cohen's,
of course,
classic famous song. And of course, a Montreal boy.
Yeah, of course.
And we're really excited to share that. But also, we have like Dvorak's Silent Woods on there, an original piece for four hands that kind of paints this spiritual heavenly picture of nature. And we have a piece depicting a sunrise, Ravel's Daybreak from Daphnis and Chloe, and then another piece about the kind of being lost in the cosmos, a very weird reimagining of Holst's Neptune that we created kind of in a minimalist, esoteric vein for two pianos. So there'll be quite a bit of variety from our recent music, but there's also one piece that I've been relearning this week from our extreme youth. We composed it about 20 years ago based on a set of films we adore, the Star Wars. At the time, it was, I guess it was just 6 films, but we based it on the original 3 mostly. Liz, do you want to add on to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, basically the program always reflects, anytime we perform, we like to reflect, the vast range of the human experience. And so that's why you're going to see, pieces that are from the traditional repertoire, pieces that are reimagined from contemporary music, pieces that are reflective and profound, and also pieces that are highly virtuosic.
I was curious if you wanted to add anything about Star Wars in particular.
Oh, yeah.
Just Liz and I haven't actually talked about this. We're getting together next week to rehearse and prepare for this, as well as several concerts on our upcoming tour. But so we've spent the last several years focused on the Hallelujah music, but the Star Wars is something we haven't talked about recently. But I've personally found it to be a little wild to look back on this piece that we wrote almost 20 years ago, because we were very, very, very different people back then.
Yes, it's interesting. This time, then, after the cycle of alternating classical players, classical composers from different periods, and modern pop, and also modern instrumental music, because we're talking about John Williams. Star Wars is a great composer for film, not only Star Wars, but mainly that. He's known for that, but we know him for his adaptation of romantic music and early modern music in a Hollywood way. And Mozart this time, Dvorak, John Williams, Ravel, sort of your rereading of Leonard Cohen, and after John Lennon and Paul McCartney for Let It Be. So it's a very interesting new mix of cultures, influences, and epochs. So you've always been interested to that since the beginning of this duet. And as you said, you composed something, you retranslated in a piano way for a duo the music of John Williams long time ago. So this process has been there for a while.
You're absolutely right. That's one of the signature elements of our partnership from the beginning. We've always, just as individuals, we've always been fascinated by all different styles of music, both within the, Western classical tradition, but also just in our own lives, listening to the radio, listening to other genres. And, nowadays we kind of take that for granted because so many people, in our industry kind of share the same approach where they're interested in other genres. But when we were writing Star Wars in 2004 or 2006, actually, we did feel like we stood out because we were taking sort of some experimental and adventurous risks while we were at school at Juilliard. And it was so wonderful to have a partner in crime who, wanted to take the music of our time and make it relevant. And that has become our mission as a duo, is to make classical music feel powerful and relevant in today's society. And that means that, we're taking cultural references from our lives, from our times, but we're also hearkening back to the great traditions of the 19th century list. All the virtuosos of the time, they were taking music from their time, folk music, operatic music, and reimagining them for the piano. So, at once we feel like people have called us innovative, but we're also, actually like truly traditional when, we're looking back at the wonderful legacy that has been set out for us.
Yeah. Well, and I would like to add that, because we're in classical music, people make a real fuss about this, and we appreciate it because it's something that really stimulates and excites us. But in pop music, they were doing this all the time, and or in popular styles, I should say. And we're talking about John Williams. His Star Wars films, they I don't want to say rip, but they're inspired frequently by classical music, including Holst, which were pairing together on the concert.
The planets of Holst are very close to the principal theme of Star Wars. Yeah,
exactly. Right. But our pop influences that we dig into, we're often actually just hearkening back to classical, like in our last album when we did Bohemian Rhapsody, which you mentioned earlier. Freddie Mercury was so inspired by opera and the various forms of opera. He has opera buffa in there, and he's kind of hearkening on like that dramatic Wagnerian opera as well as his pop styles. And so when we look at these popular styles, we're often actually just taking it back to where these artists were originally influenced.
Exactly.
And sometimes vice versa too, right? We're taking classical pieces and almost turning it into something.
That's right.
Like we talked, like we used to say we do a version of Rachmaninoff's Vocalese, and that sounds like it could be sung by Celine Dion. You know what I mean? It's like it's just a gorgeous melody, So it's a little bit of this melding and mishmash of styles and trying to find our own unique voice through those styles.
Yeah,
hopefully something new.
If we want to have a little deeper understanding of your own path, the way you reimagine the piano duo, and also the compositions you choose, because you have your style. You know, there are more and more piano duos those days. For a while, we didn't know that much about that, but now we see a few, and on a very, very good level, high level, I would say. So you're part of them, and you're one of the leading duos in that style. But if about your own piano personality as a duo, what would you say?
We are following our hearts and our guts and our own styles with all of our arranging. And in fact, one of the reasons I mean, we have some original music that we write as well, but one of the reasons I love working from this arrangement perspective is I love the idea of taking something that is familiar to people and reinventing it for them and showing them exactly how diverse music can be and how different our perspectives as artists and listeners. It always is. We talk about music being this universal language, and in some ways you can make a case for that, but I do think that music listening and experiencing is just highly personalized and full of incredible variety and diversity, and I like reminding people of that. I also love writing to kind of like putting on different people's hats, like learning more and more about Mozart's music, his compositional styles, trying it on for myself, exploring it, and then throwing my own voice in there and seeing what I can add or say within Mozart's music or anyone's music. And I think that there's this joy to being a chameleon, this joy to kind of sitting in somebody else's shoes, and there's this joy to like making something that's totally not your own, something that feels like it is your own. There's just like a lot of joy and fun and discovery in the process.
We sometimes liken our process or what we create to, or we aspire to be like a Pixar film, you know, where like Inside Out or, you know, those great movies where there are elements that can appeal to a vast range in the audience. It can appeal to neophytes. We're hoping our music will bring people into the concert hall because, you know, they'll find it engaging and entertaining and exciting. But also we hope that, you know, the aficionados will appreciate the complexity and the sophistication of the arranging of the programming. And we really try to find, you know, insightful links between the pieces that we program. And also, you know, I would just say that, you know, we've been doing this for now over 20 years. And at the very beginning, we didn't really have any role models for duos. We approached it truly as a tabula rasa endeavor because we were both at Juilliard as soloists, and we still actually retain some of that soloistic personality. You know, we still have individual careers, and we're just very, you know, different people, but we feel like we complement each other as friends and as artists and as creative partners. And we carry that spirit of friendship and collaboration and also theatricality. That's something that we don't shy away from. You know, one of the huge aspects of our duo partnership is making music videos. And that was also something that seemed kind of brand new at the time. And we were part of like that initial wave of YouTube videos, almost like kind of to our surprise. We didn't realize that certain things would go viral at the time. And, you know, that's become something that we really believe in and we enjoy doing, finding ways to make the music come alive sort of cinematically and, you know, not shying away from, you know, the intense love and pain and hope and suffering that is latent in this music. And also just even kind of literally the creativity and the imagination and the vision of so much of the music that we play. We find that there's so much potential to tap into as pianists, as interpreters, as composers, and as filmmakers.
Mm-hmm. As soloist, do you think your own styles are changing when you play together, or do you leave something there to bring something else in a duo?
Yeah, it's sort of like, it's almost like there's no real separation. You know, there's something like when you're playing chamber music of any form, you're really trying to achieve a synthesis of approach and of vision. And so I would say that the only thing that's soloistic is that, you know, we're kind of throwing ideas to each other, and sometimes even wordlessly. It's like maybe Greg may individually play this phrase differently. I mean, this happens even in the Mozart sonata, but we kind of like that there's a little bit of, like it's not this homogenous approach where we're trying to make everything sound exactly the same when we're passing off different passages and phrases, and that it truly is conversational. So I would say that that's like the true soloistic element. And then obviously in the process of creating the music, we're bringing our own opinions and ideas and tastes to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say we perform as soloists and kind of as soloists who intentionally are keeping each other on our toes, because I mean, in some ways, like a duo comes in extremely rehearsed and calculated, and while we rehearse, what Liz was saying is we try to play as soloists and then constantly respond and react to one another, which keeps the concert very fresh and spontaneous, and it really develops our skill to do anything. Because I can't travel down a path and then have Liz help me turn left and then just keep going. I have to be able to switch pianistically and play differently and adjust and adapt to that moment, which is a significant pianistic skill to kind of come in prepared in that fashion. And I definitely like we make a big deal out of like solo pianist versus duo pianist. I think the two of us have continued to play solo music our entire careers, but I don't feel like I'm any less of a pianist when I'm playing with Liz. In some ways, I might feel like extra supercharged and extra alive. But all of my skill and individuality is absolutely on the table.
And I would actually also add that, you see nowadays, which is great. I mean, it's exciting to see like two of your favorite soloists of the world stage come together and play, give a duo recital. And I would say the thing that kind of separates us from that is that there is a true synergy. It's like we're not just coming together for fun, which is actually how it started. But over the 20 years, we've really built like a telepathic connection, so much so that, we can be super spontaneous on stage. We can, just mix it up. We plays the same piece, but in different cities and different contexts, and it feels different and fresh. And we're able to, stay aligned. And, and it's also in the things that we produce. It's slightly like Gesamtkunstwerk, it's not just like, the recital that you go to, but it's like our social media, it's our, music videos clearly, and then it's music that we arrange and our recordings and our writings. So everything, there is certainly like a deeply collaborative through line to everything that we do that, maybe is different than when you see like two great soloists come together to play. Everything is like very jointly conceived, so much so that we almost kind of like, it's funny, like we're both highlighting our individual personalities, but ultimately it's kind of like a true merging where like we kind of want to be seen as Anderson and Rowe, which is why, even though we love solo music, we actually don't play solo music on our concerts.
Is there, what is the proportion of your duo activities if we include that in your whole agenda? As soloist and sometimes with chamber music or something else?
I mean, we've been performing together for 21 years, and we were doing about 80 to 100 shows a year for at least a dozen of them. And that was a lot of traveling and a lot of touring, and that did limit our ability to pursue our individual projects, especially during those jam-packed years. And since COVID happened, it's given us some time to take a breath. And we've continued pushing some of those solo activities again. So I would say it wavers sometimes between 50% of our year to solo or duo being 50% of a year to 95% of our year. It can vary, per week or per month based on the projects or activities we're pursuing.
On live or anywhere else, do you sometimes include improvisation? I mean, not necessarily jazz, but improvisation, some cycles of improvisation out of the scores.
We have actually experimented a little bit with that in the past. I remember we used to do like transitions between pieces that were improvised, almost like in the style of the old school pianists or composers who used to do that, or little cadenzas like in the pieces. Now, because just of the intensity of our touring and we're like juggling different programs, we kind of avoid it. But we always want our performances to feel improvisatory, so much so that people think that we're improvising to Let It Be, which is very jazz inspired, or other pieces, and then we tell them actually like all the notes are written out. And we'll sometimes we'll mess around a little bit, and certainly with interpretation, but we're not necessarily freewheeling, especially at one piano, because it's so complex that we'll actually hurt each other if we're not in the
I mean,
right
even when we
right
play the right notes, we hurt each other because there's no
We'll
space for
collide.
actual
Mhm.
like air in proximity and placement at all.
Yeah, of course.
But I think we are a classical duo, even though we end up playing a lot of music from popular styles, and that is something that does make us classical. It's highly meticulous. It's like painstakingly notated and planned and devised so that I don't know, it's calculated to create its own form of inner electricity. And when you deviate from some of that, sometimes it creates a new electricity, and we're cognizant of that and play into that. But sometimes it just turns it into a mess, and we don't want that.
Will we have a new record soon? Because it's been a while now.
Yeah,
Well, we just recorded a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we just recorded a new album, of which some of the pieces on the program
Oh, I
feature.
see.
And we're really excited about that. It's as Greg mentioned earlier, it's an album that's centered on transcendence, and it was an idea that came up actually during the pandemic, because during the time of isolation, we were separated, we weren't playing for public audiences. It
Really
felt
weird for us.
yeah, I mean, it felt like that collective shared experience that everyone was going through. There was something very potent about that, and we personally found ourselves drawn to music that was kind of could take us out of those circumstances of confusion and isolation. And so you know to be announced, like when there'll be a release. We obviously it has to go through all the process of being edited, and but we're really excited about it because we feel like it features the Hallelujah variations and other pieces that people have been just asking us to record at many of our concerts. And that's actually one of the reasons that we feel truly blessed to be musicians. We're able to strive and even capture the ineffable through music, and so this record speaks to that.
Excellent. So it sounds very good. We're now prepared to attend the concert on the 21st of April, Sunday, at Salle Pierre-Mercure, presented by Pro Musica. Well, we're very thankful to have you here at Panem. Very, very generous from you. We thank you very much for this interview and wish you a great tour. I suppose it's a tour. It's not only one step. So.
And thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank
And we
you.
look forward to the Montreal audience. And of course,
Excellent.
wonderful.
Excellent. Thanks again.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.
Ciao.